This old thing, it's an eyesore. Gotta come down. Orders are orders, old-timer. Step aside. Arthur winced, his heart aching as if the man was talking about him, not the magnificent oak tree that had stood in his front yard for over 60 years. He was an old man. His shoulders stooped a little with age, his hands gnarled but gentle. He wore simple, clean clothes, a faded shirt and old trousers. He looked like any other elderly gentleman you might see tending his garden. But this tree was more than just a tree. "Please," Arthur said, his voice quiet but firm. "There must be some mistake. This tree is healthy. It's important." He stood protectively in front of its wide, familiar trunk. The landscaper, a burly man in a bright orange vest, just scoffed. He was flanked by two other workers who looked uneasy, avoiding Arthur's gaze. This main landscaper, Dave, seemed to enjoy his small bit of power. He held a clipboard as if it were a scepter. "No mistake, Pops," Dave said, tapping the clipboard. "New HOA guidelines. This one's on the removal list. Too big, roots might get in the pipe someday. Blah blah blah. Point is, it's coming down today." He jerked his thumb towards a chipper truck parked at the curb. Arthur felt a wave of despair. He had planted this oak with his beloved Martha, the year he came home from his service. Each ring in its wood was a year of memories. Martha was gone now, and the tree was one of his last living connections to her, to their life together. He carried a small worn photo of her in his wallet, right next to a faded emergency contact card from his old unit, a card he hadn't looked at in years. "But I am the owner," Arthur tried again, his voice trembling slightly. "I was not informed of this. Can't we talk to someone? The HOA president?" Dave rolled his eyes. "Look, we've got a schedule. You want to complain? You can complain after it's gone. Now, are you going to move? Or do I have to get the boys to move you?" He took a menacing step forward. Arthur felt a cold knot in his stomach. He was old, but he wasn't weak. He had faced far worse than this loud, rude man, but his strength was a quiet kind, not for brawling on his own front lawn. He looked at the tree, its leaves rustling gently in the morning breeze, as if whispering a goodbye. He felt so helpless, so angry at this unfairness. If you've ever felt like someone wasn't listening to something truly important to you, type "I understand" below. With a heavy sigh, Arthur stepped back. He couldn't physically stop them. The sound of the chainsaw starting up was like a physical blow. He turned away, unable to watch the initial cuts, tears welling in his eyes. The whine of the saw ripped through the peaceful morning, and then came the sickening crack and groan of timber. Within what felt like minutes, but was probably closer to an hour of brutal efficiency, the great oak was gone. Only a wide, ugly stump remained, a fresh wound in his yard and in his heart. The landscapers were cleaning up, tossing branches into the chipper, their voices casual, already talking about their next job. Dave swaggered over to his truck, giving a satisfied nod at the destruction. He saw Arthur standing by his porch, looking at the stump, his face a mask of grief. "See? Quick and easy," Dave called out, a smirk on his face. "Just a tree, old man. You can plant a nice little bush there." He laughed, then climbed into his truck. The crew drove off, leaving silence and devastation behind. Arthur slowly walked to the stump. He touched its rough surface, the sawdust sticking to his fingers. It was over. Martha's tree was gone. He felt the familiar ache of loss, deeper this time because this felt so needless, so cruel. He sat on his porch step, the world a little dimmer. What could he do? The tree was gone, but the injustice of it burned. He remembered the feeling of being dismissed, of his history being ignored. He thought of his service, of fighting for things that mattered. This tree mattered. Then, a thought flickered. That old contact card in his wallet. It was for a fellow serviceman who had gone into environmental work, someone who understood the land, understood loyalty. Maybe he couldn't get the tree back, but maybe he could report this landscaper, this company, for their callousness, for not even showing him the proper paperwork. He pulled out his worn wallet. There it was, Captain Miller, Trees, Restoration. It had been decades. Was it even still valid? With a trembling hand, Arthur took out his old flip phone and dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times. A calm, professional voice answered. "Miller Arboriculture. This is Sarah speaking. How can I help you?" Arthur cleared his throat. "Hello," he said, his voice a little shaky. "My name is Arthur Jenkins. I was hoping to speak to a Mr. Miller." "It's an old acquaintance," he explained, simply and without anger, what had just happened to his beloved oak tree, how the landscaper had dismissed his concerns and destroyed something precious. He didn't raise his voice, he just told the truth of his hurt. Sarah listened patiently. "Mr. Miller, Sr. retired some years ago, Mr. Jenkins," she said kindly. "But his son, Tom Miller, runs the company now, and he holds veterans in very high regard. Let me see if he's available. Please hold for one moment." Arthur waited, the silence of his yard now punctuated by the distant hum of traffic instead of the rustle of leaves. He didn't hold out much hope. What could anyone do now? The tree was a pile of wood chips. A few minutes passed. It felt like an eternity. He stared at the raw stump, a monument to the morning's ugliness. Then he heard a vehicle approaching, not a loud, rumbling truck like the landscapers, but something quieter, more refined. A smart, dark green truck with Miller Arboriculture, preserving natural heritage, written on the side in elegant gold letters, pulled up to the curb. A man in his late 40s, tall and with a kind face, stepped out. He wore a crisp polo shirt with the same logo. He looked around, his eyes taking in the fresh stump, then landing on Arthur sitting on his porch. "Mr. Jenkins," the man called out, his voice respectful. "I'm Tom Miller. Sarah patched you through to my cell. I was just a few blocks away on a consultation." Arthur slowly stood up. "Mr. Miller, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure who else to call." Tom Miller walked into the yard, his gaze fixed on the stump. He bent down, examined the cut, looked at the remaining roots. His expression became serious, then troubled. This was a magnificent red oak. Tom said, his voice filled with a professional sorrow. "At least 60, maybe 70 years old. Healthy too, from what I can see of the stump. Why on earth was it taken down?" Just then, as if summoned by the injustice, Dave's landscaping truck came rumbling back down the street. Dave leaned out the window, a scowl on his face. "Forgot a rake here," he yelled. Then his eyes fell on Tom Miller and the Miller Arboriculture truck. His confident expression faltered. He knew that name. Miller Arboriculture was the most respected and most expensive tree service in the entire region. They were the experts called in for historic trees, for city parks, for the estates of the wealthy. "What are you doing here?" Dave asked, his voice suddenly less sure as he got out of his truck. He saw Tom Miller looking from the stump to him, a very stern expression on his face. "I'm assessing the unwarranted destruction of a perfectly healthy, mature specimen tree belonging to this gentleman," Tom said, his voice calm but carrying authority. "Mr. Jenkins tells me you claimed Hoa orders. May I see this order?" Dave blustered. It's processed. Standard procedure. The tree was a hazard." "A hazard?" Tom raised an eyebrow. "I'm a certified master arborist and I consult with the city and several HOAs on hazard assessments. This tree, from all visible evidence, was no immediate hazard. In fact, it was an asset to the property and the neighborhood. Its removal, especially against the homeowner's wishes and without clear, documented cause, is highly irregular, and frankly, the quality of this felling job is appalling. It could have damaged the sidewalk if done incorrectly." Dave's face turned red, then pale. He knew he was in trouble. He had bullied an old man and taken a shortcut, perhaps misreading an ambiguous HOA directive, or simply choosing the easiest option on a list. He hadn't expected anyone with real knowledge to show up, especially not Tom Miller. If you believe people should be held accountable for their actions, type "accountability now" in the comments. "Mr. Jenkins," Tom said, turning back to Arthur, his voice softening. "My father, Captain Miller, often spoke of his service buddies. He taught me that the trees veterans planted when they came home were symbols of life and hope. Was this one of those trees?" Arthur nodded, tears finally spilling over. "Yes, my wife Martha and I, we planted it together." Tom's expression became even kinder. "Then its loss is more than just a tree, it's a loss of heritage. My company, Miller Arboriculture, we have a program. It's called Roots of Service. For veterans who have lost a significant tree, especially one with personal history, we offer a replacement, a mature tree planted at no cost." Arthur stared, speechless. Dave, the landscaper, looked like he'd been punched. You can't be serious," Dave stammered. "Perfectly serious," Tom said, not even glancing at Dave. "Mr. Jenkins, we have a beautiful 15-year-old red oak at our nursery. It's not as grand as what you lost, not yet, but it's strong and healthy. We could have it here and planted for you by the end of the week. It would be an honor." The relief and gratitude that washed over Arthur were immense. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you." Tom smiled warmly. "It's the least we can do. My father would have insisted." He then turned a cold gaze back to Dave. "As for you and your company, I will be speaking with the HOA president this afternoon. I will also be filing a report with the local business bureau regarding your unprofessional conduct and environmentally damaging practices. I suggest you find that rake and leave." Dave, utterly deflated, mumbled something, grabbed a rake from the back of his truck, and practically fled. He knew his company's reputation was now on the line, and his boss would not be happy. True to his word, by the end of that week, a new, vibrant red oak stood proudly in Arthur's yard. Tom Miller himself supervised the planting, his crew working with care and respect. Neighbors came out, having heard the story, some offering Arthur words of support, others looking ashamed they hadn't stepped in sooner when they heard the first chainsaw. The new tree wasn't the same as the old one. The decades of shared memories with Martha weren't embedded in its bark. But as Arthur looked at it, strong and promising, he felt a sense of peace. It was a new beginning, a testament to kindness in the face of cruelty. The story spread through the community. The HOA reviewed its tree removal policies, and Dave's landscaping company lost several contracts. Miller Arboriculture's Roots of Service program received a flood of donations. Arthur never forgot the pain of losing his original tree, but the generosity of Tom Miller, a son honoring his father's legacy, healed much of the wound. He would often sit on his porch, watching the new leaves unfurl on his young oak, a quiet smile on his face. He knew Martha would have loved it. This story reminds us that even when something precious is unfairly taken, acts of kindness and respect can bring about powerful restoration. It teaches us not to judge people by their outward appearance, for a quiet old man can possess a rich history and deep connections. And it shows that standing up for what's right, even with a simple phone call, can change everything. If you believe that kindness can make a difference, and that heroes, past and present, deserve our utmost respect, please subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories. Never underestimate the power of a helping hand.